Alright, this is Madcap Music Review. We're here in the studio with legendary producer and engineer, Ulrich Wild. How you doing, brother?
Good, how you doing?
Good, man. Thank you for having us.
No sweat.
So let's go back to your earliest days. 19, you leave Switzerland, and you get to the Bay Area.
You have done your homework.
Yeah, and you somehow managed to hook up with Sandy Pearlman.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story because right out of high school in Switzerland, you kind of have a 6-month break before you have to join the army.
Okay.
And you kind of don't know what to do. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go to America. I'm going to study English and, just explore the world a little bit before I, join the military for, the 17 weeks and blah, blah, blah. And I really liked it. I ended up overstaying 3 months and met this girl who is now my wife back when I was 19. And I was forced to go back to Switzerland. I was able to handle it for like 2 weeks. And I was like, I got to get back over it. I was lovesick, and I really liked America. And I was on my way back. And then I talked my parents into paying for this recording school, the College for Recording Arts back in the day. Probably the worst recording school on earth at the time. Still probably is. I think it's defunct now, so I can talk bad about it. But it was so boring that I ended up looking for an internship, and I just kind of opened the yellow pages and called up every studio. I was like, hey, I'm here, I'll work for free, I just want to do something productive instead of just hanging out at the school. And lo and behold, Nancy Evans over at Alpha and Omega, Sandy Pearlman's place, said, sure, come on down, we could use some free slave labor. And so I went over there, and they started putting me on like running gigs and fetching coffee and cleaning toilets and all that typical studio assistant-y or runner interny stuff, until one day they decided to move me up into assisting, and kind of went from there. After 2.5, 3 years of working there, I decided that I should move to Los Angeles, and kind of never looked back. It was 1990.
When you moved to LA?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did not find a job as easily as I hoped I would, and I actually was forced to take a job at Guitar Center, but I never actually worked there.
Really?
On my day into work that fateful Tuesday morning, I stopped by a studio for an impromptu interview, and they hired me on the spot, and they asked, when can you start? And I said, let me make a phone call at Guitar Center. They didn't care if I showed up or not, and they're like, I'll start right now, and there it was. It was a place called Studio 56, which was completely insane working there. They had no clue what they were doing. And after a short while, I ended up over at One on One, and they were making the Metallica Black record, and went from there. Yeah,
and you started working with Terry Date.
Yeah, that was my lucky break. After several years over at One on One, Terry came in and did that Fishbone record, and I was on that project, and we got along, and eventually he hired me.
Yeah, and Terry Date, one of my favorite albums that really could have been something, was Mother Love Bone, that he did Apple. Andrew Wood passing away, pretty much formed Pearl Jam. And I always wondered, is that kind of how you got into working with bands like Alice in Chains? Because I know you did some stuff on Dirt. And
Alice in Chains, a bunch of those bands I only assisted, and I was just hired by the studio, and they just would come through. One on One was a kind of a drum tracking place. I was very known for like the big drum room. So a lot of bands would come in and do drums and basic tracking there, and then move on. There's other ones that would do a whole album there, but there's like Dirt was one of those albums that we just basically tracked drums, because they had It was back in the supersized drum sounds. They had these huge, I don't know, 30, 40-inch woofers that they would set up next to the drum kit and pump the kick and snare through to agitate the room more and have less, relatively speaking, less cymbal sound in the room sound. And that was one that was one of the things that they were known for, is setting those enormous speakers up next to the drum kit. It's pretty funny, pretty awesome.
How proud were you to be nominated for a Grammy on White Zombie's Astro Creep 2000?
It was great, and it came out of nowhere. People called me up, and it was really fantastic. We didn't win it. I went to Dave Bianco, a buddy of mine, and well deserved. As long as it didn't go to the guy like the Eagles thing, then
or Jethro Tull or something.
I was fine with that. The White Zombie record was a beast of an album to make. 3 tape machines, Pro Tools, loops, live drummers, like the whole thing. And the main thing about that record was that the drums weren't actually gridded. It was the loops that were timed to the drums. So the record has like a fully live band feel with like full-on loops and backing tracks and the whole thing.
A lot of samples too.
Just non-stop. I mean, it was like, on some songs, 3 tape machines was not enough.
Wow.
And nowadays, that's no big deal anymore because you just have hundreds of tracks in Pro Tools or whatever. But back then, having an extra tape machine going ended up being a lot of money because not just the tape, but the rental of the machine and the linksys and all the cabling. It was quite a beast. So having been nominated for that thing was awesome, but perhaps a little too soon for me because it was very early on in my career, and I thought I was going to get nominated for every record.
Right, yeah, like once that happened, you're like...
Yeah, that's what I do,
I go to the Grammys.
But that is not so, and, it was nice to have been nominated. Maybe again some other time, never know, maybe.
And so how did you end up linking up with Adam Flower and Sean and Chris and Ronnie and all them? Because from what I've heard from what Sean showed me, it's got some similar zombie-esque elements.
Yeah, Sean actually contacted me, and I listened to his stuff, and I was like, yeah, I'm into this. I can help out with that. I think I'd be a good fit. I always kind of go where the music takes me. If I don't like the music, or if I don't feel I can contribute in a positive way, I'm very hesitant to sign on unless somebody really has a vision of thinking that I should be the guy. Because I gotta like the music, and so Sean sent me a couple of tracks, and I was like, yeah, let's do this thing. And yeah, he combines some of these electronic elements with the live band, and that's kind of like it's, I want to say it's second nature to me, but it's I'm into that kind of stuff, and I'm digging it, and it's
right.
I get it, maybe that's the term, like I understand it, and I know where it can go. I'm not afraid of it.
Right.
I don't mind things stepping on each other and carving space out for things and stuff like that.
You can see where it can ultimately go and lead to.
So I'm not intimidated by it or something like that.
So tell us a little bit about your studio and how you got that set up. And
it's a studio. It's a home studio like many producers have nowadays. We converted the space. And I had to build it, I'm kind of a hands-on kind of person, and I did a lot of the framing, not all of the framing, but the remodel portion of the framing, and then a lot of this, all this finished work, and the cabling and the wiring, it's a lot of work, but you just kind of have to do it. the music business has changed. You kind of have to watch the budgets nowadays. It's not. It's changed completely. I mean, like most rock records now are pretty much done in somebody's bedroom.
Right.
And you get a lot of tracks in from people who record their own music, and they want me to mix it. Budgets just got slashed. Like everything. Somebody came and moved the zero in the music business. Like the decimal point, and you have to find your way. And in some way, it made everything a little bit more creative and less budget obsessed. Like it used to be. Like, I can't continue with this record if I don't get my favorite 1176 from the rental place. Let's
right.
just wait for 2 days until that becomes available. None of that stuff happens anymore, I don't think. Maybe in the hip-hop world or something, where people are a little more fast and loose with money, but I think the rock world is pretty much, has tightened the belt pretty well.
Yeah. What was it like working on For the Love of Strange Medicine? Steve Perry's second solo album.
That was very intense. He's a really cool dude to hang out with in the lounge.
Uh-huh.
But when he gets in the studio behind the microphone, he's very intense and knows exactly what he wants and is very adamant about doing everything exactly like his way, and so that kind of kept me on my toes. Again, I was just assisting that, but I was kind of pushed into the engineering portion a little bit, I think, like running the tape machine and stuff like that. But yeah, man, he was a cool dude, and in a voice like that, it's just so intensely powerful.
It's got to be amazing just to hear it in the studio, just the natural flow. I mean, that guy can.
Yeah, I mean, there's some guys that they open their mouths and start singing, and it's just there. I'm just like, holy crap, this is amazing.
You could be reading the ingredients on a box of wheat thins, and it would sound like
yeah,
great.
It doesn't matter what they'll sing. And Robin Zander's one of those guys, amazing. Paul Rogers, he was really fantastic. It's actually one of my favorite stories is he and his microphone and compressor and this whole thing. And the engineers, again, I was assisting that, but the engineers set up the nice microphone, C12 I think it was, and the nice compressor, I forgot what it was. And he comes in and listens to it and he's like, this doesn't sound right. Well, this is good stuff. I mean, it's like, yeah, but it's not the mic I usually use. It's like, well, what do you usually use? I said, well, I'll call my guy in England. It's like 4 in the morning right now. I'll come in tomorrow and I'll tell you what it is. He came in the next day, a little piece of paper. It had 57 and a DBX 160X on it. Like very non-expensive gear. They're great. They're great units. A great mic. I mean, 57. There wouldn't be a music business without it.
Right.
And the DBX 160X, the same thing. I mean, it's just a staple. And but it's not what you, as a pristine audio engineer, would use on somebody's voice.
Right. It wouldn't be the first thing you'd pick.
First thing. And so they were actually a little bit scared to do that, and so they put the C12 up and the 57 underneath. They had both. They tracked both chains, and sure enough, the 57 and 160X that sounded golden. That was the combination for his voice. And it just goes to show you, you can't be afraid of price tags either.
Yeah.
It's not. It really isn't the gear. It's the song and the performer and the performance. And as a producer and as an engineer, my job's kind of to create the freedom to allow the performance to perform well and not worry about like this peripheral noise from the world coming in. unless of course your peripheral noise is what they need to be creative. So that's a whole different thing. Yeah. But you know, like I do get asked a lot of times, like, what's the you know, what's the best mic? I was like, the best mic's the one you have in your hand when you have the idea.
Right.
I mean, that's your best. It's the same as a camera. You know, it's like, what good does it do you if you have your iPhone ready to take a picture, but you opt to like go break out like your $3,000 camera to take a better shot, and by the time you have it out and open, it's
missed your
almost
shot.
gone, you know. So it's it really is. It's not the ears, the ears, you know, and the heart. You know.
Can you tell us?
That's way off topic from your question.
Oh, no, that's fine. Tell us a little bit about your involvement with Adult Swim.
Again,
And,
that was I got a call through the Bomb Shelter Studios. It's changed names since, but the Bomb Shelter and MySpace actually back in the day. They called me up. Brendan, or actually Ryan Page was the line producer at the time. I was interested in making a cartoon death metal album, and I said, "That sounds out of the ordinary. Sure,
Right.
take me up." And I've been working with the Dethklok Metalocalypse guys. You know, Brendan Small, he's the main man behind the whole operation. Working with him for several years now, several albums. It's always a good time. It's a very different way of working because it all ties into a TV show. It's not just a band coming in with 10 songs and recording it. It's you know, especially like the
Storylines and themes. Or...
not so much the first 3 albums. They were mostly just a fleshed out version of the songs that were in the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So we tracked those albums well after those episodes had aired. And what you hear on the episodes is just Brendan doing his thing. And I had really not much to do with it. But I was fortunate enough to make the albums with him afterwards. Not so with the Doomstar Requiem, the 1-hour special, which was very well tied to the animation, and we actually would get new vocals in and send those out immediately so they could start animating. And it really was, you know, we were well under the gun time-wise, and we just needed to battle through it, and we did it. It was very, very intense, but very rewarding. Mixing a 50-piece orchestra is
Sure.
cool.
I can imagine.
And combining, like, you know, metal and real orchestras together, making that work. I mean, we're talking about a metal band that takes the full frequency spectrum and an orchestra that takes the full frequency spectrum, laying them on top of one another, making space for it all. It's pretty sweet.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So going back to your earliest days, when you first got bit by the musical bug, what was it? Was there a particular album that you just happened to hear? Was it an older brother's record collection?
Yeah, you know, this is, oh man, I should have found this out for Throwback Thursday. Flashback Friday, I guess. When I was about 10 years old, I discovered a 45. If you remember those things, those
Sure.
little things
Yeah,
like this
yeah.
big. Well, for the kids, you know, explain. For the kids out there these days. Well, dude, this is like a generation that grows up without fucking modem noise. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, it's
I've
crazy.
never heard that. But anyways, it was a song called Winchester Cathedral.
Oh, shit. Winchester Cathedral.
Yeah, man.
Dun, 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 dun.
That was one of my earliest memories of music that I didn't hear on the radio first.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in Switzerland, it was basically like a top 40 kind of thing on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of things. ABBA was huge at the time, like 78. And so I went from Greece. Like I was into the whole Grease thing.
Yeah, the soundtrack.
ABBA, I went from that to Kiss Alive 2.
Ah.
And that freaked my parents out pretty well, which is not, you know, that's why we do this thing. And still, like, if the music I create now doesn't like upset parents, I'm kind of doing my job wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah. Got to
And-
stir some kind of emotion.
Yeah, yeah. And So there was Kiss Alive too. That was probably, I mean, that was like the big step. And then after that, it was like Rainbow and Difficult to Cure and like British Steel.
Sure.
Like Motorhead, Ace of Spades, and all that good stuff.
New wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. I mean, I could rattle off some, and the obscure wave of German metal.
Oh yeah.
There's some German bands that, and you know, they were just like
Living Death, I think.
Yeah, there was a Faithful Breath was some weird Viking themed metal band that was hilarious, especially now. But you know, like the Running Wild and Destruction and those things.
And then Warlock, who ended up breaking out. You know.
Yeah, Warlock was pretty sweet. And there's a Swiss guy named Paganini, actually. He was in a band that was actually pretty cool. But yeah, you know, it's all that, I mean, you know, Saxon, Tigers of Pantang.
Yeah, Diamond Head.
Yeah, all that good stuff. And then it was time for Don't Break the Oath.
Ah, yes, King Diamond.
And no, it's much like, yeah, I mean, King was the singer, but and that album.
You got that demon coming up through the fire. It just looks
that
evil.
Demon comes like out of the speakers, and you listen to the what was the song? There's some weird Indian burial scene that they had going on, and ghosts rising and God only knows what. And I was like, I don't think I should have this album in my house. Like I'm not like I'm not big in this whole religious thing, but this might be a step too far.
Right, it might bring some things in I don't necessarily want.
Yeah, this might be. I might not wake up tomorrow, or somewhere I don't want to be.
Yeah.
And then, but you know, I survived it. And then, you know, so that kind of is what happened. Metallica came along. I was never big in the Slayer train, but you know, I saw Metallica open for Venom on the Ride the Lightning.
Oh wow!
Tour in a tiny little place in Switzerland, and that was loud.
I can imagine. And then all those years later to be in there when they're doing the Black album must have been quite a trip.
It was actually a very funny meeting Lars. You know, his last name, my first name.
Right.
I was making fun of him or something like that.
And there was a lot of tension, I know, at the time in the studio because Bob Rock was taking him more of a hard rock direction, and they were kind of fighting him, and they were breaking. Well, no, Jason had already been on Justice, but you look back at some of those documentaries, it looked like he must have had a rough time of it in there.
Yeah, you know, I didn't perceive it like that. I mean, I came in right when they were done with drums. I think there was like 2 or 3 days left of drums when I came in, and then Lars went out drinking and came back green a couple of days later. He was nearly dead. But you know, they just were doing their stuff. I mean, just guitar overdubs forever. And vocal overdubs, and I was just like, hey, can you run this guitar down to that guitar shop for repairs? Can you do this? Can you do that? Yeah, bring it on. It's my job.
Yeah. So in all your years, what's the most important lesson you've learned?
Trust your instincts, probably. You know, and you know, like the studio battles, can't take things too serious. You know, and have a good time making a record. I think kids can tell if you had a good time if you're making that album. Not that it's always easy, but it doesn't. You know, there'll be drama here, and something's going wrong there, whatever. And it's not. You know, we're not flying a plane. Nobody's going to die. You know what I mean? Like it's a pretty cool job. But, you know, like, you got to be able to let some stuff slide and, you know, have a bit of a thick skin.
Sure.
And stuff. And be able to put just stuff behind you and move on, you know. And dwelling on stuff doesn't really take you any place good, you know.
Absolutely. And so what are some of the current, besides Atom Flower, that you've got going? projects?
I just mixed a band called Media Solution, which is a pretty sweet metal band. A band called Death Division.
Okay.
That's pretty awesome. A mixing band called Nukem. They're kind of a thrash outfit out of San Diego. I'm working with 2 guys from Cold Chamber right now.
Oh, wow.
On their new venture called We Are the Riot. And that's actually, I'm very excited about that. These other things I'm mixing, or was mixing. This one I am producing and actually developing on kind of a new developmental label that I'm starting. It's the first project for that. And so I'm very excited about that. Did a band called Precious Child out of DC. They're more kind of esoteric rock, esoteric metal. Very cool. Their whole thing was, let's not do what everybody else does. Just always push it kind of the opposite direction a little bit. And then a theatrical prog metal rock outfit out of Pittsburgh called Leisha Stark.
Oh, very cool. That sounds cool.
Yes, and they're pretty cool. That's about it for the last couple of months.
Right on. Where's the best way people can find you online? Your site's impressive.
Well, that's
nice looking.
That's an easy way. UlrichWild.com or Facebook. And just Google me. You'll find me, and you'll find the German Doctor. I'm not the German Doctor. Although, time will tell. Perhaps one day I might be. But it's I have a kind of a wacky name, and you can easily find me.
Right on. Thank you so much for the time, for having us out. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for doing this.
Right on. Ulrich Wild, folks.